Hello, ladies. Good afternoon. How are we doing tonight? Good? Wait a minute. How are we doing tonight? Woo!
Oh my
yes,
God.
there we go.
I love that sound.
Yes,
I love that
me
sound.
too.
Of women cheering.
Y'all, we have a full house tonight. If you have any spots available at your table, you please hold up the number of spots. So 1 for 1, 2 fingers for 2. Okay, we have a spot in the middle. Any other ones? All right, well then we can make some room. Are those seats already called for? They're taken? Okay, great. Okay, I know we're starting a table in the back as well. Oh, I love this so much. It's so exciting.
So good.
I love it. Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tanya. If I haven't met you, that was Angela up here. I'm a pastor here at River Point and Weston Church. Angela is our women's ministry coordinator here at River Point. And I just want to thank her for getting all this ready and set up for us and all the amazing desserts and the picture frames. And if you think this week is fun, wait till next week. Oh my goodness, we have so many big surprises for you next week. It's really going to be great. And we'll set up some more tables if you want to bring a friend. So we'll have some more space in here for that. But we're just really glad you're here. How many of you, is it your first time here at Women's Small Groups? Don't be shy. Wow, I'm so proud of you. Y'all welcome all of our guests. Listen, here's what I know. It's terrifying to walk into a room full of women like this. Like, what's going to happen in there? You know, I don't know if that's safe or not. But we work really hard, you guys, at making this a safe place for you. We want you to come in here and just go, and push out the day and be able to just have a good time and laugh. We don't take ourselves too seriously in here, but we do talk about a lot of serious things because we really want to grow in our faith and grow closer to God and to each other. So I'm so proud of you for being brave enough to join us here, and I hope you feel really welcome. If you have any questions afterwards, see Angela or me, and we'd love to answer those, and we'll welcome you back in the fall as well. But we're just really glad you're here. So one of the things we do in women's small groups is a little bit weird, but you have notes that you got tonight, and in those notes, there's pens on the table and markers, and you're welcome to follow along. I'm going to stay pretty tight to my notes, and I may ask you to underline something or highlight it. So feel free to scribble, scrabble the whole time. It sure doesn't bother me. Also, in your notebooks, we didn't tell you, but we have some just decluttering tips in there. We weren't assuming that you needed to do that, but they were super helpful for Angela and for me. So we just thought as a little bonus, something, we'd put those in the back, and maybe those will be handy for you as you're making space and making room in your homes. So sometimes, you guys, I'm invited into people's sacred spaces when there's a memorial service, when they've lost a loved one. And I get to do, some of you may call it a funeral service. Here at River Point, we typically call it a memorial service or a celebration of life. And when I begin those services, one of the things I do to kind of set up the time is I say that during this hour, however long we're going to be together, we're going to hold space or make space for living in the tension of both joy and sorrow, of laughter and of tears. You know, the joy of the memories of this person who's lost now, and also the sadness and grief that we're not going to see him anymore this side of heaven. And that living in that tension is a challenging thing in a memorial service. It's really a humbling thing to be invited into people's stories in that role. So last spring, I was thinking about this whole idea of holding space and living in the middle and living in the tension and what that looks like. Because isn't that every day in life? You know, you're kind of living in the tension of all kind of things all day long. And I told Angela I really wanted to talk about the idea of holding space or creating space. Well, little did I know what was going to happen this summer on the river. I had no clue that that's what would be ahead. That there would be so many families and so many friends holding space for the unspeakable loss that happened to so many. Really an entire city, entire state, an entire country, an entire world, like living in the tension of that. And so many memorial services where that would be what would be going on in room after room after room, and church after church after church. And I'm in your notes now if you want to follow along. But I think sometimes space, it's as tangible, isn't it, and predictable as like the ticks on a clock, right? And then other times it's this intangible place and time where you almost lose your place in space. You know, NASA's Hubble telescope recently captured an image of deep space. And on this image, there was this little spot on there, this black spot on there. It was about the size of a grain of sand. And when they did the zoom, zoom, zoom in on it, you know what they found in there? 3,000 ever-loving galaxies. I can't even wrap my brain around that. 3,000 galaxies in there. So what looked like virtually nothing, like a little grain of sand, it was actually this expansive space. That would be full of wonder and just waiting to be explored. And I'm convinced that at least for me, and I think for probably you too, there are spaces that God wants to show up and speak into that I'm totally unaware of, or maybe I'm just not available for. So for the next 2 weeks, I want us to talk about creating and holding not just physical space, although I think that's super important, but also emotional, spiritual, and relational space for the things that really feed our souls and sustain our lives and have the potential to become what I call sacred spaces for us. And of course, you know, we all know the 4-letter word that challenges this. It starts with a B, ends with a Y. Y'all say what goes in the middle? Yeah, okay, everybody, let's try that again. Starts with a B. I know we can do this. And you can say this 4-letter word. Starts with a B, ends with a Y, and it's busy. Yes, that's true. And busy is actually celebrated and wildly excused, I think, in our culture. But here's what the research tells us about how this is going. Here's a few stats. The average person, and this is up on the screens too, but the average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes while awake. 76% of Americans report feeling burnout at work, and 28% say they're burnout very often. Children today have, get this one, 40% less free time play than children in the 70s. I think that's true. Adults spend less than 20 minutes per day in meaningful conversation with family members, and 61% of people admit that they're addicted to their devices. But here's the most sobering statistic. Studies also show that chronic busyness literally rewires our brains. Teachers, you know this is true, makes us less capable of deep thinking, creativity, and meaningful connections, all the things that God actually created us for, right? So we're not just busy. I mean, we're becoming biologically incapable of the very things that God designed for us to live out in spaces of fullness and flourishing and abundance. Not good. This is not good. But the thing is, first, we have to make room for that space to even be filled, to even fill it. Because our calendar can actually hold part of the power over who we want to become. So it's good for us to pause and consider, who do I want to be? Who does Tanya want to be this year, next year, in 5 years, in 10 years? And see whether or not the things on my calendar, on your calendar, hold the space to support and encourage that. Which means we don't want to let either the busyness of a cluttered life or an artificially filled life control our relationships with either God or others and leave us filled with a form of activity but totally empty in our souls. So earlier this summer, I had some time to consider some of the areas that lacked space in my own life. And it was really great to have a reset on this. And I know it's going to require some discipline on my part to continue to hold space for those things that are priorities going forward. But what about your life? right now? You know, when was the last time you had an unhurried conversation with God? And I know that seems like a little bit arrogant, like, okay, I'm going to make some space for God, you know, when he's the one who holds all the space anyway, right? But what if holding or creating space isn't just about finding time, but about making the time we have sacred space? Because here's what we know. You know, we all know a crowded life is not necessarily a full life, right? And when everything gets equal space, nothing gets the sacred space. And when we don't choose what matters, life is going to choose for us, and rarely does life choose well, does it? So I'm going to put a gardening map up here. Any of you gardeners? Let me see the gardeners in the room. I love you guys. I'm a little bit jealous of y'all. But I have a gardening friend. She's a flower garden friend. I wish I had her gift. If you do have a garden and you raised your hand, you should not ask me to come over. I don't know what happens when I get near a garden, but it's not good. But every spring, my friend walks through her backyard and plans her flower garden. She maps it out. But she doesn't map out where she's going to plant. She actually maps out where she's not going to plant. And it's not because she doesn't have the seeds. She has plenty of seeds. She has plenty of flowers to plant. But she understands that every plant needs what? It needs room to breathe, and the roots need space to spread out. And it's because evidently beauty needs margin. You should write that out. Beauty needs margin. So one summer, she was gone. She left early in the summer, and she went on an extended trip, and she had like a watering system taking care of it. But I had another friend who's also, she thinks she's a gardener. She's just, you know, she's that person. And so she was checking on my friend's flower garden. She went over, and she decided there was just too much negative space there, like too much naked space. So she brought over some of her flowers, and she filled in. And in the beginning, it looked amazing. And then by the time my friend came back, it was a hot mess. It was totally overgrown. Everything was stunted by it. All the flowers were competing for all of the resources, and nothing ever bloomed to its full potential. So my friend came back, and she actually pulled those out, sorry. And, you know, she reset the spacing, made it like she wanted. And by the end of the summer, there were fewer flowers that created way more beauty than the crowded garden ever could have. It makes sense. So more isn't always better, is it? And much of the time, space is what creates the conditions for flourishing. Would you underline that in your notes? Much of the time, space is what creates the conditions for flourishing. Which means holding space isn't about what you're losing or giving up, but how you're actually positioning yourself for gain. Here's a few things I thought of, and these are off the top of my head, and I know there's many more that you'll think of tonight. When you create space for prayer, you gain peace. When you make space for rest, you gain restoration and refreshment. When you create space for deep friendships, you gain connection. When you make space for your mental health, you gain hope and you gain clarity. When you make space for your physical health, you gain strength and you gain confidence. When you hold space for joy, you gain contentment and gratitude. When you make space for whimsy and play, you gain spontaneity and delight. I think as women, sometimes we lose that because we carry such heavy burdens and loads. When you make space for grief and loss, which is what set this whole thing up for me in the beginning, you gain healing and you gain hope. When you make space for the redemption of a wound, we could spend a whole night talking about this, you gain healing and you gain freedom. I can testify to that. And that's just a few, you guys. And of course, this looks different in different stages and seasons of life, doesn't it? Oh my goodness. So whether you're here and you're single, or maybe you're a student, maybe you're newly married, maybe you're a young parent, maybe you're building your career, maybe you're an empty nester, you're caring for your aging parents, we need to be asking the question, what does it look like to hold space for my, underline it, spiritual, emotional, and physical health in this particular season, in my season, in the season I'm in. And I'm so excited, you guys, because next week we're going to talk about this. We have a whole cross-gen panel coming in. We have some young singles, we have grandmas in there, that may be me. But anyway, we have a whole panel for next week. But here's the thing, Jesus, he totally got this, and he modeled it. He modeled it over and over again. This is just one example. It's in Luke 5:16. And it's short and it's so powerful. And it starts with the word but. But Jesus, because there was a lot going on and people were coming after him. I mean, think about it. It's Jesus. Who didn't want to be around Jesus? Well, except the people who hated him. But anyway, but Jesus, circle the next word and say it out loud. What is it? Say it loud. Yeah. But Jesus often did what? Withdrew. He pulled back. He pulled away. He withdrew to where? Lonely places. In other words, solitude. And what did he do there? Okay, I'm going to read it. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. So the key word here is what? It's often. He often did this. He often withdrew to rest, write that in there, and to pray. And I'm just thinking, if the Son of God needed to hold space for rest and time with his heavenly Father, how much more does Tanya need to do that? How much more do you all need to do that? So today I want us to have what I call, some of you heard me say this before, this phrase, but a raised level of awareness. I want us to come out here today going, aha, I need to think about that. A raised level of awareness of our need for holding space, to identify a few of those spaces, and I want to challenge us to be intentional in asking God to speak into them so we don't miss him and we don't miss his heart. One of my favorite pictures of how to take a next step in this area, it's found in the life of Moses. He's one of my favorites. And it's before he assumed his role in leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. And we pick up the story when Moses, he's out and about. He's on an ordinary day. He's doing his job. His job is tending his father-in-law's sheep. That's what his job is. Regular old day. He's traveling a route because with sheep, you'd move them around and about. You had areas you'd move, the same ones, and you'd circle it back, move. So he's traveling a route he'd probably passed through many, many times before. So you know how when you're driving somewhere and it's like you're on the route, you don't even remember what the signs are or anything. You're just going. Your car's like automatically going there. He's on the route with the sheep doing his job. This time it looked different. You ready? Here we go. Exodus 3, one of my favorites. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not being consumed. So Moses said, I want you to underline this, circle it, highlight it. I must say the next two words. Turn aside. Say it again. Yeah. I must turn aside and see this marvelous sight. Why the bush is not burning up. When the Lord saw that he did what? You say it. Aha. When the Lord saw that Moses turned aside, circle it, highlight it, to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. How scary would that be, right? And he said, here I am. And then he said, well, don't come near here. Underline this. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you're standing is holy ground, sacred space. And he said, I'm the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And then Moses hit his face because wow, he's like, whoa, what is happening here? I'm just not going to look. So he was, not only am I going to step back, step away, I'm not even going to look. He was afraid to look at God. So obviously the key repeated phrase here is what? Turn aside, turn aside. I must turn aside. Had Moses not intentionally turned aside, he'd have totally missed it. He'd have totally missed God showing up in what seemed to be the most ordinary of the spaces. It was that complex and it was that simple. So he could have ignored it, he could have discounted it, he could have been too busy with the sheep, too distracted by all of their needs, or just spaced out in the zone, leading around. Yet in doing so, he would have missed so much. He would have missed his calling, not to mention the whole Exodus and his purpose in life. So here's the thing. We serve a God, you guys, who still shows up in the most unexpected places and spaces. It's true. And sometimes we're going to walk past a bush that we've seen 1,000 times before, but it's exactly where he wants to show up. When we do what? Underline it in your notes. When we do what? Did God call Moses Moses when he was just in the bush burning it up? No. He called him Moses Moses when he turned aside. And when we lean in and we hold space for him to show up, even in the most mundane things of life, that's when it becomes, underline it, a sacred moment. And I really love in the Old Testament, you guys, how that was marked by taking off your shoes. Isn't that cool? That was the marker. Holy, sacred space, the shoes come off. So there's a lady who's a poet. Her name is Elizabeth Barrett. I think her name is now, I think she got married again or something, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but whatever. She said it this way. This is like my favorite poem ever. If you don't like poems, you're going to like this one. Anyway, it says this, earth's crammed with heaven. Will you think about this as we read it? Think hard about it. Earth is crammed with heaven. And every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit around and pluck blackberries. Okay, now that sentence seems a little off with the rest, but it's not off. So here's why. Because in Old Testament in Israel, the most common bushes were like the acacia bush and the blackberry bush. So it fits, right? She's saying not only are they missing the bush, they're just sitting around picking the blackberries off of it, totally missing the Moses, the fire inside. Can I read it again? I love it so much. I've read it so many times this week. I think I'm going to put it on a card for you guys next week. All right, here we go. Earth's crammed with heaven everywhere. We're missing it. I know I missed it several times today in the mundane of things. And every common bush afire with God, but only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit around and pluck blackberries. I don't want to be that person, the blackberry picker person. But the things that matter most, you guys, deserve the prime real estate of our time and attention. And when we hold space for God within them, they become places where our shoes, they've just got to come off. It's like, Tanya, get your shoes off. You got to get them off. Because they're embracing what's eternal and what's holy. And I don't know about you, but for me, I just want to have my shoes off more and more. That's the life I want to live. Barefoot. I'll just die barefoot. That'll be me. I'd love that. So this summer, I held some space for friendships that got away from me. So I'm just a really terrible long-distance friend. And I moved about every 7 years in the early years of my ministry. So I was really invested in the places where I was ministry, but then I would move away and I'd get invested in a whole new place. And y'all, I did not do a good job of keeping up with my people, a terrible job. So this summer, I decided that I was going to reconnect with some of those long-lost friends. Hopefully they'd have me back. And I was very intentional about it. So I scheduled the time, and I decided I was going to invest some money. I spent the money to go visit a few of them. It was amazing. I cannot tell you how grounding and restorative it was for my soul, and I believe it was for theirs too. And God showed up in each and every one of those spaces. So I also held some space this summer for focused prayer, and I'm going to end with this. So, and some of you may have seen part of a Facebook post I made on the women's page. And by the way, you should follow the Women's Ministry Facebook page. But my son and daughter, and I call her my daughter-in-love, Allie, gave me this candle this last year. Well, it's kind of like multiple candles. It's called an everlasting candle. And I can't really do regular candles because I can't do the wick situation and the chemicals and the smell. Anyway, I'm a big baby about that. But anyway, they gave it, so they've found the perfect thing. So they gave me this everlasting candle. It burns real clean. And I decided that I was going to spend some time in focused prayer around 3 things about this candle. And so every day I focused on the first thing. We'll start with this one. The first thing was for someone that I care really deeply about. It's windy up here. Who's really struggling. And every single day, I prayed for her. Every day, all summer, this is what I've been doing. The second one is for a decision that every illustration falls apart. I had a feeling. Can y'all visualize my candle? Okay, so the drama is out of it. The second one, you guys, was for wisdom for a decision that Kent and I need to make, and we were really praying for wisdom. The third one, once all the tragedies happened in the river, I've been lighting in solidarity to join in the grief and the loss of those mamas and daddies and friends and family members, to pray alongside them. Every day, I light this candle and I pray those prayers, and it's not windy over where I put it. And every day I pass by that, and every time I pass by, and I pray that. And I feel like it's a sacred space, you guys. So I'm going to send you home tonight. Angela got you little votives. You may want to get everlasting candle. You may want to get a big old candelabra. You may have 10 things that you need to pray about. This is about what I can focus on. But I'm going to send you home with that. I'm going to ask you to commit. Could we commit together in this room for 30 days to light a candle for these families that are suffering and friends out of that? I think that would be a great gift that we could give all of those people. And I think it'd be a good thing for us to join together in that. So I hope you'll do that with me. So be sure and pick one of those up when you leave today. So you're going to get to talk about this in your groups, and it's really going to set up what we're going to do next week. But can I pray for us, and then you'll have a great discussion. God, I thank you for every single woman who made the brave decision to come here tonight. They took time out of their day, their evening, they're not headed home. They came here instead, and I pray that this time together would be restorative, that this would be a sacred space, that you would meet us here. We light a candle in our mind's eye and in our hearts tonight, asking for you to show up right here in this room right now and speak to us in Jesus' name. Amen. Y'all have fun with us. And your table leaders will lead you. All righty, time to wrap it up. Hope you guys had a good time in your groups. If you're new to women's small groups, make sure you picked up a card to take home and just put it in a special place as a reminder a little bit about what we talked about. So also, when you leave today, my everlasting candle is lit in the lobby, and it's lit next to all of your votives that you can, so be sure and pick up a votive. So you're going to want to go out these doors so you can pick up a votive to light for the next 30 days on your way out. So next week, y'all want to hear about next week? So next week we have a real live band coming in for us. Do a little, I know, y'all. And we actually have a fun song that's really special about making space. So we put the link in your homework. So put it on repeat so you kind of know it, so Ariel doesn't stand up here and have to sing it by herself. So try and listen to that on repeat this week. For our non-chocolate lovers, I see you. I don't understand you, but I see you. I do. So what do we have, Angela, for non-chocolate lovers?
They are mini fruit tarts, and they are delicious. I've been back to the bakery twice just to eat them myself. So
See?
they are so good. Yes.
She keeps, I haven't had them, I'll be honest, but she keeps talking about them like Tanya.
So good.
So I don't know what's happening next week.
And
Something
we'll
about
have
a fruit tart.
gluten-free ones.
Oh, and there's gluten-free ones. So
Yes.
see, that's winner,
They're
winner,
beautiful.
chicken dinner for me, or tart dinner, whatever. Okay.
And table leaders, your rosters are on the table. Please, everybody, if you could fill that out for me, that's just really helpful for me to know who's here. So fill out your full name, your email, and your phone number. That would be great. If there's no more room on the lines, just flip it around on the back and you could put it on there. And we are so excited for next week. It was
Love
awesome
you guys.
to see you, ladies.
See y'all next
Bye.
week.